We're going to go ahead and get started here. It's 9, so thanks for coming, everybody. As the title slide would suggest, my name is Stephen Valdinger. I go by @StevieCoaster all over the internet, so if you're looking on GitHub, Twitter, X, LinkedIn, whatever, you'll find me there. Today we're going to talk about simple network management protocol, but we're going to throw a lot of PowerShell at it. So this has been around, and first off, thanks to all our sponsors that kind of make this thing happen, right? Very, very appreciative of all their efforts to make sure we're well fed and taken care of during the week here. So thank you to those guys. Now, a quick note. I'm using old protocols, V1 protocols, because it's very, very easy to make the connections and I don't have to jump through any hoops. Don't do this in production. Use V3 because you can use authentication and have it be a little bit more secure. So when you see all of my examples and you see a version, change it to 3 and add some extra stuff on there for credentials or certificates, whichever you want to use. And if any of you all are security folks, you can make checks payable to me. So, thank you. So SNMP's been around for a really, really, really long time. 1988 is when this thing formed. And it kind of formed out of the need for the explosiveness of the internet, right? In 1988, we started to come online in our homes as the personal PC boom happened. And, ARPANET was formed and, the military was doing all this stuff with networks that crossed the nation and we were connecting devices and we needed a way to check on those devices and make sure they were okay. So they came up with this protocol called Simple Network Management Protocol to make that happen. Now, they probably should have picked a different name, like Frustrating Network Management Protocol. It is simple, but it's not very intuitive at the same time. So we'll dive into that as we go along here. But at its heart, SNMP is all about an OID, this identifier of the thing that you're trying to poke, whether that's a temperature sensor on a rack or a humidity sensor in a data center or a fan inside of a switch or whatever it is. Those OIDs are the things that you're going to pull for the data. So let's break one down, right? So if you're getting started with SNMP and you're trying to figure out what all this means, without fail, it's going to start with .1 because .1 is the ARC that stands for ISO, the group that made the standard. So everything starts with ISO. And as you start moving further and further along down these OIDs, they start to change. So 0.3, that's the ARC assigned to organizations like Microsoft, Cisco, they're private entities. .6 is assigned to the Department of Defense. I told you this stuff was old, and ARPANET was kind of the reason for it. So it kind of makes sense that the Department of Defense has their own identifier in this stuff. .1 is internet-related OIDs or public-related OIDs. This thing connects to the internet or to a network of some kind. .2 stands for management-related OIDs, hardware-related OIDs, et cetera, et cetera. And then as you further start to break this stuff down, you get into, well, this is assigned to MIBs, which there are a bunch of, and we'll dive into. But it's really, a MIB is just a bunch of management objects all in a nice little package, whether that's, the individual NIC ports on a switch, the fans in the switch, or whatever that piece of hardware kit is, all that information, wireless access points. What are the radios doing? How many clients are connected? What's the uptime of the thing? Or even in this room, what's that projector doing? What's the life of the bulb that's shooting the image onto the screen? All that stuff is available via SNMP if you turn it on and configure it. .25 is very specific to the host resources MIB. this is going to be for things like processor utilization, system uptime, et cetera, et cetera. And as you dive further down into the host resources MIB, you get to .1, which is the actual uptime object, which has the actual uptime and a bunch of descriptors around it. There's like 4 or 5 things in .25.1. And as you dive further down into it, you start to be able to pick out individual things. So if you think of an OID like a PS custom object, right? A PS custom object has a bunch of script methods, or they have note properties that have different things. You know, you could have an object that's a car, and the model is a Ford, the color's black, it's 4-wheel drive, whatever, all that stuff. You can kind of think of an OID in the same way. So when you look at this, and if we were to back up, .1.3.6.1, and stop at 25, that's our object. And then as you dive further into that object, that's the properties that are available on that object. But without fail, pretty much everything you're ever going to encounter with SNMP, it's going to start with 1.3.6.1.2.1. And as you move further past that, it's going to change, and it kind of becomes the Wild West, because it's up to the individual manufacturers to make that stuff up, basically, and provide that information to you. And then again, this trailing 0 is just a finality thing. You don't really need it. This is just a complete object if all you care about is the uptime value. Like, this is how long this machine has been turned on. And in this example, that trailing 0 is optional. If you walk with it or without it, you'll get the exact same thing. But for totality, that's exactly what it is. And then that's all of our slides. I'll come back to this when we're done. So let's actually dive in and take a look at some stuff, right? So I'm going to just come over here and boot a couple of boxes so that they are on their way up. And let's go to the demos. So the first thing we're going to do is get some disk usage stuff, right? So how many of you know that Windows Server actually supports SNMP? You can turn it on and then you can query this stuff, just like you can with WMI. Probably are never going to turn on SNMP and configure it and use it on a server, right? But this is a pretty tiny little podium, and there's not much room to put a rack beside it with a whole bunch of network switchgear and all kinds of cool things. So it's pretty convenient that you can use it for demos. So let's look at what it takes to actually talk SNMP. That's the SNMP walk command. And is the Zoom and everything okay? Everybody can see it in the back? Okay, perfect. Awesome. So if we look at the disk size, what we're going to get is the size of the volume, the C drive on this server. And then we're going to return that data. So if we look, we've got the SNMP walk command. That's the binary that we're going to run. And then we've got this -v2c thing. That just means we're going to use version 2c of SNMP. Now remember, I said don't do this. There's no authentication or anything with version 2 and version 1. It's only available in version 3. But for the sake of simplicity here today, I'm not messing with setting up certificates and all that junk. And then we have this -c thing, and the value is public. That's the community name. So a community name is this arbitrary value that you can configure on the device, and then that's the value that you need to set for the community when you walk the device. That way everything works. If you say my community name is public, but on the device you've configured it for, you know, Reese Cup or whatever the heck you want, it's not going to give you any data because your community is wrong. So there's a relationship there that has to be correct. That has to be right. And then after you've defined your community, you give it the fully qualified domain name or the IP address of the device that you're trying to walk. And then you give it the OID that you're trying to walk as well. Now, in this case, I'm going to manipulate the data a little bit with .split so I get exactly what I want. And just to show you that there's no smoke and mirrors here, we'll just run that little piece and hope that it comes back. There we go. So you can see that it gives me back the friendly name of the object here, and then it tells me what kind of object it is. It's an integer, and then we have the actual value. So all I'm doing is splitting on the space here and getting the last item in the array. So in this case, just the value. So if I were to grab the entire line and run it, that's going to give me this disk space variable, or this disk size variable. So if I just return that, I just get the value, which is exactly what I want because I'm going to do some math. And then the next thing we're going to do is get the used space. So disk size is how big my C drive is, and disk used is how full is it. So we're going to grab that next and run that. And then we're going to do some math and figure out what percentage is used versus what percentage is available. So I'm just going to grab, actually I'm going to grab all of these. So we do this math and return this object. So now we've got an object here. My disk is 88% used, 12% free. And if you were to do some, if you were to do get volume, for example, and say drive letter C, and do the math on it, it would be the exact same thing. So get volume is going to use WMI under the hood to do that work and figure that all out for you and give you that object back. But SNMP can give you the exact same data. And it might be that your security team likes that because, from a remote perspective, they don't have to open anything else up. If they've already opened up port 161 for SNMP across a bunch of firewalls and, VLANs or whatever, they don't have to open anything else up for you to be able to collect that data from your servers. Port 161 is the only thing that you've got open. So from a security perspective, maybe it makes sense. I don't know. But it is possible to use SNMP to query things like disk space and stuff like that. So, and just to show you the server uptime stuff, you can also poke that OID, and this should be a relatively low number. Yeah, so if we look, we actually have that time ticks value here, and there it is. So if we were to, do the same kind of thing again, let's do 0, and then let's run that. Then we get that. Where is the time tick thing? Did I mess that up? I think I messed that up. Let's see. Oh, that's right. That's not needed. We'll come back to this in a second. Yeah, I think I do. Yeah. You'll notice that I'm adding another parameter down here as well. So when we ran this stuff, we were getting like the friendly name, and I'm adding -on to the command here. That just returns the OID instead. So that's a little switch that you can toggle. Let me try and run this again. Oh, silly thing. There we go. So we can get that OID again. And if I do the dot split and get their data back, you can like cast that to a datetime object and then get an actual datetime out of that. But just looking at it here, this machine's been up for about 24 hours, which is about correct because I turned this thing on yesterday to patch it. So that's all of that stuff. Now, again, where this gets kind of fun, and I can't really show this to you because I don't have a printer, but these are from the printer MIB. So these are standard values that you can pull to get things like the toner out of your network, like your laser printers. So if you look here, I've got my drum life for my brother printer at my house. I've got a remaining capacity and then the capacity. So using that, I can do some math, and then I can figure out how much life is left in my drum unit or my toner. Now, I print one document a year to pay my city taxes, and then the printer sits there unused. So it's been at like 99% for 8 years. So I don't print anything. But this kind of stuff is really, really useful in an organization. When I was at my previous org before Chocolatey, I was at a university, and they wanted to charge us quite a bit of money for their management software to be able to do like the automatic collection of all the counters across all the printers on the campus, which was obscene because in about an hour, I had code that spit out the same Excel sheet and it didn't cost me anything. It cost me an hour of time, but I used SNMP to collect all the counter information across all of the devices, collated it into an Excel document, and sent it to the billing office. They cross-referenced everything, signed it, and sent it off, and we were done. Everybody was happy. So it can save you a bunch of money, too, if you want to spend some time writing some code. It's pretty cool. And then we had a screen like this in our office that we had dashboards on. And I had like all the toner levels across all the devices on different dashboards, and it would like flip through them. So we could look and see, and then we would get an alert when a toner level would like dip just below or just threshold that the device would start to warn you on the screen. So you walk up to the thing, it says low toner. Well, I didn't want people calling me all the time for a low toner warning. So I just put a ticket in via SNMP and polling and all that stuff just before that thing started to pop up. Then I could tell somebody on my team that, hey, go replace that toner, whatever. So it was pretty handy in that regard too, because you can get people off your back if you can be a little bit proactive by polling the data. And you'll also notice that we've started to change things a little bit when we dive into this demo. Up here, I'm using SNMP walk, right? And I'm giving all the native arguments to the command. That's not very PowerShell-y. When I ran this command here, I got back this string of stuff that I had to do something with. I had to like manipulate it. That kind of sucks when you write PowerShell all day. You want to play with PowerShell. So what we're going to do next is take SNMP walk and turn it into a PowerShell function. And that becomes start SNMP walk. And then we can start to have parameters. And it starts to feel a little bit more PowerShell-y. And then when we run these commands, we're going to get a PowerShell object back, which is awesome, because then we can use all the cool PowerShell stuff to do stuff with that object. And to do that, we're going to use something that Jason Helmick touched on yesterday, very, very briefly in State of the Shell, Crescendo, which I love Crescendo. I don't use it enough. But every time I do, I love it. It's so great for taking native commands and turning it into PowerShell stuff. So let's dive into this a little bit. And I apologize that we're a little bit all over the place, and I'm going to throw a lot of information at you. Like I'm teaching you about SNMP, and now we're switching gears and we're doing crescendo. But if you put all of this stuff together, when you go home and you go to work and you're looking at your estate and your organization, and you can go, well, if I use that thing I learned last week, I can get all this data, and then maybe we can save a little bit of money here, or maybe we can get a little bit more data here and have some more observability in the service that we provide. Like there's all these benefits to this SNMP thing. So we're going to teach you over the next little bit how to really turn it into cool PowerShell. So thankfully, the Crescendo stuff is a module that you can install from the gallery. You can install Microsoft.PowerShell.Crescendo and get all these commandlets. And then you can start to build your functions that you want. So the very first thing that we are going to start with, it's the command itself, right? So we're going to use new crescendo command. We're going to give it our verb and our noun and what the original name was. What native command binary are we wrapping? So in this case, I want to call this thing start SNMP walk. So verb and noun, that makes sense. And then the binary that I've been playing with recently has been SNMP walk. So that's what I'm going to wrap. Now, if you want to be really safe, I say original name is SNMP walk here because I know that SNMP walk is on the path, right? So if you want to be really, really, really safe, what you could do is something like get command SNMP walk, something like this, and then we can say at the end of it, dot source. And that'll fully qualify the path to SNMP walk as it is on the path. So if you want to, that's fine. But if you're, like to live on the edge a little dangerously, you can just do it how I had it before, like this. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to run this little piece, and I'm going to get my object back, right? So let me see. I should be able to have my crescendo command object at this point. But now we need to start adding stuff to this command, right? This command needs parameters. And up to this point, we were using, -v to provide the version, -c to provide the community name, and then a target IP address or FQDN, and then what OID we want to actually walk, right? So I'm going to create an array of parameters here, and I'm going to put the new parameter info command into play, and I'm going to define all the parameters that we've seen previously. So I want -v on SNMP walk to be -version on the PowerShell command, because you want to be a little bit verbose with your parameters, right? You want these things to be very PowerShell feeling, and that's very, very descriptive. You know exactly what that is. Same thing with community. Instead of -c, what the heck does that mean? I'm going to say -community. I know exactly what that means. And the same thing for target and OID. Now you'll notice that for an original name here, when I was using SNMP walk on the command line, if I up arrow a few times to get to something like this, and after the -on, I've got an IP address, and then I've got my OID. There's no there's no parameter there, it's just a value. So for original name for those items, I'm going to say null. There's not going to be an original parameter for that thing. And there's something very interesting about version as well, in that the version, when you use the native command, there's no space between the V and the actual version number. But in PowerShell, it don't work that way. That's going to throw an error all day long. But Jim Truer, the guy that wrote this thing, thought of that. So here in a little bit, we're going to manipulate that parameter, and we're going to add the no gap flag. And what that's going to do is when it comes time to run this command, before this parameter gets passed to the native command, it's going to take the space out so that it's actually correct. So let's go ahead and grab all these parameters and go ahead and define this array and get that on our way. And actually, I'm going to Control-C out of this and clear this so that as I go, I don't get it confused and hit enter at the wrong place. Did I? Oh, thank you very much. I had a real nice mouse that I was going to use, and it's down there in my bag, so you have to deal with my trackpad. Apologies. Now, handlers. This is probably, like, this all makes sense, right? New crescendo command, you know what that does, and then new parameter info. That makes sense, right? What it does. Handlers, on the other hand, are a whole nother piece of work. So we need some way to take the output of that native command, that string that we got back from SNMP walk, and turn it into a PowerShell object. And in Crescendo, those are called output handlers. And all it is just PowerShell that consumes the output of the native command and parses it and turns it into whatever object you want, however you want that to look. And there's a couple different flavors of those output handlers. There's inline, which we're doing here. It's just a script block. There's function, which is you define a function, and if it's available on your function drive, like you've .sourced that function into your running session, Crescendo will pull that out of the function drive and ship it with the module. It'll make a function in your new module for that, but you have to define the function and load the function into your session, and remember to do that while you're compiling your Crescendo module, or else Crescendo is not going to ship it. And when you go to run your native command, there's not going to be a handler, and you're just going to get the output of the native command back as you normally would, and you're going to take your laptop and throw it against the wall because you forgot to do something. Like, you're going to get frustrated. The third way to do a handler is a script file. So you can say, hey, here's a path to a script and include that script. But if you do that, it's up to you to ship that script with the module and make sure that the path is relative to the module when you're using it. So by far the easiest and best way, in my opinion, is to use an inline handler, because it's just a script block and it's shipped with the thing. It's part of the command. You don't have to do anything. Like, there's nothing for you to do, like to remember to do, to have that handler come along for the ride and be available. So use this kind. Use a script block. Use the inline handlers. They're, in my opinion, the best. So this handler is pretty simple. We're just going to consume the output of SNMP walk, and that's just, an array of lines. Yeah, it might be a single thing, but it might be, if you walk an OID and there's 30 nodes underneath it and you get all those data points back, well, that's going to be an array. But you don't really know what type of data it is. Technically it's going to be a string, but thankfully PowerShell is awesome, and everything in PowerShell is an object. So just call it an object, because it is. It doesn't matter if it's a string or an integer, whatever it is. It's an object, and it's an array of them, and here you go. So, and I'm super clever. It's just lines. That's what I call the parameter. And then I just loop over those lines one by one and create a PS object out of it. So that's what we do here. We say lines for each object, and then we need to parse the output. So we're going to use some regex. If you're going to use Crescendo, you're going to get really good at regex, because it's the best way to parse the output of all these native commands. And it's really not that bad. It's really not. So if we look at this, what we're going to say is we've got the very first section here. Actually, I'm going to go like this. And we're going to use a named capture group. That's what this OID thing with the brackets means. And then we're going to grab absolutely everything up to the equal sign. Because if you remember in our SNMP walk output, if we were to, I don't know, pick this one, for example, the OID is this very first part up to that equal sign. So we're going to grab that and call that our OID. The next thing we're going to get is our type. What is this thing? In this case, it's going to be time ticks. So we're going to say, hey, here's this name capture group, time ticks. We're going to grab everything up to that colon, and that's our type. And then after that, it really kind of depends on what OID you walked, what the data type is, what that's going to look like. And I don't really care. I just want the value. So after that colon here, give me everything else. And I get the value. That's basically what that regex means. Now, your mileage may vary, and you might be a lot more clever at regex than I am, and have a better way to do this. I guarantee you there is, because I fumble with regex, but I got it to work. And then after that, we just do, null equals current thing in the pipeline matches matcher. That's true, it matches, and we're good to go, but I don't need that output. I don't need that true false output every time that match works, right? And then we just create our PS custom object. So we create this object, couple properties, OID, we pull, and this is why I like name capture groups, because matches dot whatever the thing is in the regex is what you can grab to pull that stuff off of there. So you don't have to like index into an array of matches, like that automatic variable matches. You don't have to index into that to figure out what you want to pull off. So named capture groups make getting the data off of the regex feel a little bit more PowerShell-y, honestly, right? That feels like you're pulling a specific property off of an object, which technically you are. So that's it. That's the handler. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our handler, and I'm going to run selection and check my time. All right, we're good. And did I run that selection? I don't know. I'm going to do it again. Okay. Now that I've defined my script block for my handler, I need to actually tell Crescendo that there's a handler, right? So I'm going to use this new output handler commandlet, and I'm going to tell it all about it. So I'm going to say it's the default parameter set, because you can have more than one handler for a command, because you might have the need for more than one parameter set. We're talking about SNMP walk here, but Crescendo works for any native command. So you might want to, call Docker a certain way, or a couple of different ways, depending on what you're doing with the Docker native commandlet. So you might have a couple of different parameter sets, and the output of that Docker command is going to be vastly different depending on what you're doing with it. So you might have a handler per parameter set so that you can control that output a little bit better. So I'm just going to say we don't have a whole bunch of parameter sets. It's just going to be called default, and we're good. And then for the handler, because this stuff all technically gets converted to JSON, that's how Crescendo does it. You get a JSON file, and then you build a PSD1 and PSM1 from that. That needs to be a string. Well, right now we just defined a script block, so that's a little weird. So what we do is we call the toString method on our handler object that we just created up above. That way, now it's a string. Now it's going to convert to JSON just fine, not a problem. And then we need to tell it what kind of handler it is. So in this case, we're using that script block. It's going to be inline. So we're going to run that selection, and then we're going to have our output handler. And you know, I don't think this actually does anything interesting. It just is going to output the script block. This is just to prove that yes, the output object has my handler on it. And then we're going to doctor all that stuff a bit, right? So remember that version parameter we created? Well, we need to squish that together. So I'm going to set no gap equals to true on that particular parameter. And then for my crescendo object that we defined all the way at the top, we need to add our parameters to it, to that object. So we're going to do that here by saying, hey, the dot parameters property on that object is this array. And then the same thing with the output handlers. We're going to give it our output handler. And if we had more than one, this is an array. You could pass more than one. So we're good there. And did I do that one? I did not. So we'll do that. So now we should have everything. Now we can actually generate the JSON schema that Crescendo uses to produce the module. So, and before I do that, I'm going to go into this Crescendo folder. That way everything's nice and tidy over here on the left. We're going to run this selection, and all of a sudden we're going to see this snmp walk.json file. This is the JSON that Crescendo, all those commandlets generate for us. So we've got our command, and we've got the platforms that it runs on. It's cross-platform here, so Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. And then we've got all of our parameters. So here's version, -v is what the native command uses. We didn't do anything like with position or anything like that, so it just throws a number in. But then here's that no gap thing, and it's set to true, and it's going to squish that version number against -v for the native command when it comes time to run it. And you know, we walk down through this. It's pretty self-explanatory because we defined it on the commandlets before. And then you know, we've got our output handlers, and you know, we did that two string thing so that it came through correct, and then it got converted to JSON. So it looks really, really ugly when it gets in here, but it works. Like, and you didn't have to write that; it did it for you. So yay! And that's it. I mean, you can get more involved if you want. You can add examples. You can have help stuff to all these things. You can do everything that you want to make it a really, really complete command, but I'm kind of lazy and don't want to, so here we go. But once we have that JSON file created, now we need to actually generate the module. So what we're going to do is say export Crescendo module, give it our configuration file, and then name the module what we want to name it. So in this case, I want to call this module snmp, because that's what we're playing with today. So we're going to say snmp, and all of a sudden, if you look over here, we get a PSD1 and a PSM1. Our module is now built, and now we can start to use it. So if we run this command here, we now have our stuff. And we're not going to go through the snmp bulk walk command. It's just another JSON file. It's the exact same thing, just a different native command. Bulk walk will actually like connect to a device and scan a whole bunch of OIDs like at one time and save a little bit of network traffic. So if you've got like, you know, 10,000 top of rack switches and you're doing snmp queries against all of them, and there's all these OIDs that you're trying to query, bulk walk is a little bit more performant and probably be a better option for you. But for the vast majority of cases, it's not going to matter. So snmp walk is just fine for that. Think of it kind of like for each object parallel in PowerShell 7. That's SNMP bulk walk. So you either do one at a time or you thread it and you have a bunch of for each objects running at the same time. That's literally the difference between SNMP walk and SNMP bulk walk. But let's actually play with a SNMP as a PowerShell object. And to do that, we'll drop down in here to this data and we'll start to look at some data. And this is where it gets really, really fun enabling SNMP on Windows Server. Because you can do something like this. Hey, there's all the software that's installed on this machine from programs and features. And I grabbed it via SNMP, not WMI, not anything else. It's all there, and it's really fast. And that comes from this host resources mib, the HR software installed property of those. And then there's going to be one OID per entry in programs and features. So if you've got 150 things in programs and features, it's going to be 150 numbers. If there's 2 things, there's going to be 2 numbers. But now this is a PowerShell object. Now we can do stuff with this thing without having to manipulate a string first, because the handler did all the string manipulation for us when we ran the command. So now we can have fun. We can just make cool stuff happen. So what we're going to do here is we're going to change the display name a little bit. So if you look, my handler produces an object that's OID, type, and value, and I want it to be a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is come in here and I'm going to use a calculated property and only grab the values, but I'm actually going to call it display name, because in programs and features, that's what it is. I didn't have to do anything crazy with string manipulation. I just used select object and a calculated property. We do that all the time for everything else. Now I can do it with a native command, and it's super simple, and that's super cool. But it gets better, right? Like, I've got this little function here, and I'm not even going to show you because I'm embarrassed. But it's called convert to prettier HTML. So you can kind of guess what it's going to do a little bit, right? So if we run this little block here, boy, that looks like a mess, doesn't it? Man, what are we doing here? So we're getting our SNMP data. We're piping it to select object and changing the value property to display name. And what we're actually doing too is lopping off the quotes from that display name as well, because that looks silly when you're doing a report. I mean, yeah, it's fine, but I don't want them, so it's PowerShell. I can get rid of them. That's what replace is for. And then I can pipe that again, because again, PowerShell is object-based. It has this thing called the pipeline. Use it, right? Pipe it to convert to prettier HTML. And then we're going to do out file, write an HTML file, and then we'll open it up. So if we run this, we're going to open this folder up, and then I'm going to attempt to open this HTML folder in a browser, and all of a sudden, I've got an HTML report of all the software that's installed on this machine, and I used SNMP to do it. That's cool, right? Like, SNMP is pretty useful. So just think if you if we go back and I talk about the thing that I did at the university with all those page counters and stuff. This is pretty much how I did it, but I didn't have Crescendo at the time. So I had to do the string manipulation and stuff, and like I had to figure all that out every time I wanted to do it. It was kind of a nightmare. I really wish I had this when I was doing that, because I probably would have just built a static website somewhere that the business office could have just went to the website and said, hey, I need, this printer over here, boom, there's the counters, and given her a button to say, hey, print a PDF or whatever. Like, here, self-service, do it yourself, here's all the data. But we have Crescendo now. So you guys can take this back and do the same kind of report things and make it look pretty, whatever. But yeah, it's really, really fun. SNMP is super, super useful. And everything, and I mean pretty much everything that has a network port on it has SNMP. It's probably just turned off. If you log into the web interface to the thing, there's probably a setting under the network options to turn on SNMP. Takes 30 seconds. It's not that bad. But once you've got it turned on, the sky is the limit, right? There's so much data available to you that you can use to, see how many clients are connected across your wireless access points, across your organization, see where your saturation levels are. Well, this gets really busy and the network gets really saturated and slow in this area. Maybe we should add another wireless access point. That's a pretty good use case for using SNMP data. Or monitoring the individual switch ports on your top of rack switches. This one is like flooded. Why is it flooded? Now that you know it, now that you see that, you can go investigate. Well, what's connected to that switch port? And then you can go, oh, it's this device over here. Why is this device so chatty? Oh, it's broke. So it's just sending packets for no reason. I need to replace it. You wouldn't have known that if you weren't checking it. And SNMP is a great way to check that stuff. So I'm going to pause there because I'm at 45 minutes for questions. And I've given you a fire hose. So does anybody have any questions on Crescendo, SNMP, anything like that? You?
Do you have any favorite resources for finding MIBs for things?
The favorite resources for finding MIBs, the vendor website. The vendor website, especially for printers, is really good. Cisco is really good about having MIBs available for all their stuff. Extreme Networks is really good. Ubiquity is really good. And then some vendors are really stingy. Like, they've got them, but they're buried. But if you ask really, really nicely, they'll give them to you. But honestly, all the MIB is going to do is like give you a file that you can use a browser for. And Passler, the guys that make PRTG, have a really nice set of tools for working with MIB files and discovering the stuff that's inside and available in there. But honestly, if you've got SNMP configured on the device and you can talk to the device, just walk it. You don't have to provide an OID for a thing, right? Like, if we were to come back here and like, I'm going to be like forever. But if I were to come back here and just give it an IP address and run, it's going to walk the entire SNMP tree. It's going to give me absolutely everything. So yeah, I'm saying -on here and doing it by OID number, but again, if you leave that off, it's going to give it to you by like the friendly name of the thing. And SNMP v2-SMI is a really, really popular MIB. If you like, that's a standard MIB. The host resources MIB is a standard MIB. So all the data is there, but yeah.
Another secret way to get the MIBs is System Center Operations Manager.
Yeah.
Management packs commonly use MIBs, and if you open one of those management packs with a vendor, their MIBs are usually listed in there.
Yep, all kinds of ways, yeah.
Any good resources you have for people to learn regex better?
Regex101.com is awesome. It lets you put in, well, here, I'll just freaking show you because it's super simple to go to there. So regex,
Okay, fair enough.
yeah, ChatGPT is actually incredibly good at regex stuff. But when you use ChatGPT, be specific. Say, hey, help me write this regex in PowerShell. because if you don't say in PowerShell, it might give you regex that's incompatible with .NET, and it might give you like a Java-based regex that PowerShell is going to fall over because it doesn't talk that specific regex type. So, and that's kind of true of anything with ChatGPT. Be as specific in your prompt as possible because you're going to get better data back. Yeah. And then it might be wrong, but it's going to get you 80% out of the way there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is regex 101. So you put in, the data that you want to regex here, and then you type your regex string here. But the nice thing about it is there's like all these references over here. So if I want like a look ahead, for example, I can say a positive look ahead. It gives me an example and what that means.
Okay.
So then you can use that, put it up here, and then trial and error. Now, again, you're going to write regex, you're going to learn regex. Eventually, this is going to end up on the floor, like my phone, right? Because that's just part of learning regex is frustration.
Yeah.
But regex 101 is really, really good at it. It really is. Yeah. Steve? Yeah. By default, this works for PowerShell. But yes, be careful. Be careful because there are a ton of flavors on the left-hand side. Yeah.
Yeah, I just noticed for the first time that it has the .NET 7.0 C# on the flavor.
Yeah.
By default, it goes to PHP.
Yeah.
I've never actually run into something where the PHP doesn't work like
Yeah.
the .NET one.
Yeah.
The other thing is, just a pro tip that I tell people is stop using -like and start using -match in your PowerShell. And that'll force you to learn and use regex. And once you switch over, you're going to stop using like, I promise.
Yeah. Yeah. -like versus -match there. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, oh, darn it. There we go.
The thing about regex though, I've learned that between the -match and -like is, if you're worried about efficiency, -like is more efficient than
Just a tiny bit.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So, and I mean, yeah, that's going to matter when you're processing like millions of rows. Like there's a time and a place for performance. Like, it's the same thing. Well, I could use this commandlet to do this thing, but if I needed to be really, really performant, I'm going to just use the .NET class and methods instead, and get rid of the overhead of PowerShell loading the module or loading the commandlet and using the native commandlet. Like, that's exceedingly rare to do that when there's a native commandlet available to do the thing. But if you're dealing with a huge data set and performance matters and processing that stuff, every record is 3 or 4 milliseconds of speed. You could carve, 20, 30, 40 minutes, hours off the processing if you use the .NET method. So yeah, that's a good point that, there's a time and a place for like, but -match is really awesome. Yeah, yeah. So about exactly a week ago and a week and 45 minutes ago, I got a message from James Petty. Hey, have you had any bourbon yet? It was like 11 o'clock. No, James. Why? He's like, well, I've got a question to ask you. And I wanted to make sure you had bourbon inside you before you did. How would you like to turn your 45-minute session into 90? I have no self-preservation instinct, so I said yes. So you get me for another 45 minutes. So how would you like to, the SNMP stuff that we just learned about, how about we live build an observability platform that actually uses the data so you can kind of see how useful it is. Sound like fun? All right, good. Well, too bad you're in the room and I'm in control, right? That's what we're going to do. All right. So let me clean myself up here a little bit. And look, so.
Are you going to use soap?
Am I going to, no. Nope. I'm going to make sure all these are.
very good.
You notice how I just moved on.
Yeah. Too many of those, we're gonna just have to take a rest.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. Not even going to repeat it. No. No.
Thinking about SNMP, it's been around since literally 1989.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is like old stuff.
over the Windows 3.0.
Yeah, it's old stuff. But it's been useful the entire time. Like
It came out between OS 2 and Windows 3.0.
it's awesome stuff. So we're going to build an observability platform. So I've got just a demo server here. This is the thing that's got SNMP running. This is the thing that all that stuff came from, that we saw before, the programs and features stuff. This is that box. This is my Prometheus server. This is the data collector, if you will. So what this does is it runs a service called Prometheus that will talk to any device that you want and with a lot of different protocols, and then it will collect those metrics, and then there's a query language behind that you can use to get that data and then graph it, whatever. So we'll build Prometheus. We're going to build the SNMP exporter for Prometheus, which is a thing that talks to SNMP devices and gives that data to the time series database that is Prometheus. And then I'm also going to use a WMI exporter as well, just to show you that Prometheus can do more than one thing. And then we're going to build a Grafana box. So how many of you have heard of Grafana? Ever used it before? Like several of you? Okay, cool. So it's really, really, really pretty dashboards. Like gorgeous dashboards. And it's free. Well, it can be free. It's got an open source version. But they do have, a self-hosted cloud or a hosted cloud version, and you can get enterprise. And, if you want to pay for support and all those things, you can pay for it, but you don't have to. The open source version is fully featured and works really, really well. So we'll build Grafana out as well. So I was really afraid of conference Wi-Fi, you know how it is, so I've kind of staged everything here. So the first thing that we're going to do is unpack the Prometheus download. So if you go to, just Google Prometheus, the first thing that pops up is a GitHub link. It's pretty easy to find it. But I'm just going to unzip this and then move it to a C Prometheus folder. And then, actually, is this going to, yeah, VS Code is going to be annoying. Give me 1 second so I can trust this so that I can get a terminal. Thank you. All right, so where is that? All right. So by default, we now have, it's unpacked, it's ready to go. We can start using it. But I've left myself a little note here to go grab my configuration, because that's going to be relatively important for us to have. So if I come over here, apologies, I'm going to be flipping back and forth now. So just bear with me and don't get whiplash. So I want, actually, let's do it this way. Crescendo configs. I want to grab my Prometheus configs. Grab all of these. We're going to copy them to here. And then we will paste these things in here. So basically what I've done, just no smoke and mirrors involved. I have already defined a Prometheus configuration that works. So if we look down through here, this will need a little bit of tweaking because it's not set to talk to my demo server fully yet. It does, but it doesn't use SNMP. So what we can, actually it does use SNMP, I lied. So you give it a bunch of different jobs. You give Prometheus stuff to do via jobs, and then you tell it the schemes that you want it to work. So in this case, it's going to use HTTP to talk to my server and do stuff over WMI. Here's an SNMP one that talks to a printer at my house that we can't connect to, and all that stuff. And then what MIB module do you want to use? And that's where the MIB thing kind of comes into play. In this case, we're going to use the printer MIB, but we'll define something different and change that later. But this configuration works for now. So we've got that done. We've got our configuration in place. Now I'm going to make sure that it actually does what it's supposed to. So all I'm going to do is start a process for Prometheus, and then I'm going to validate that it actually works. So we're just going to run this here. And what that should do is launch a browser, in theory. Or not. Here.
It's still running for the last thing.
Oh yeah, it is. Daggone it, that's right. I was supposed to copy this and use PowerShell. That's right. Getting ahead of myself. I need another terminal. I'll just do that. There we go. Do that. That looks horrible. What is it doing? Seriously, what are you doing? Firefox, you turd.
That's how you really feel.
Yeah. Just give me this. All right. Wow, that's so bad. What? Haha, look at that. It's so smart.
Move the window.
I didn't mean to move the window.
Damn touchpads.
Jeez. I really want my mouse. Yeah, so boom, yay. All right, cool. And you'll notice it's running over a SSL too. I don't think I'm going to have time to dive into it. But I used Let's Encrypt to go out and get SSL certificates for all this stuff. It's really, really simple to do. And then we can install a service, which that looks good. This trackpad is going to be the death of me.
Click on the line and just hit F8, it won't run that line.
If I was on a Windows machine, you would be correct.
You don't have that buttons on Apple?
But that's a kind of a pain in the butt on this particular Mac, yeah.
Control it will also do it, if I remember right.
Oh, yeah? Check that out. All right, so we'll go with the path to our binary, and then I actually need to grab the arguments as well. So take all of these. There we go. Install service. There, so NSSM, so it runs as a service, and now when I kill this, I shouldn't need this anymore. And actually that'll do weird things. Okay, cool. And then we can, actually, you know what? What does this button do? Oh, touch thing. There's a button. Look at that. All right, cool. Now, is that actually? Oh, okay, yeah, put me back where I wanted. Perfect. And then we did all that stuff, and we got the service started, and then let's F8 this to see if it's still running, and I need to start the service. Start service Prometheus. There we go. Now if I run that, that should be up and running. Yeah. So Prometheus is good to go. Now, let's do Grafana next. And Grafana is quite a bit easier because I can just go to my Grafana box and open up PowerShell and say Choco install Grafana .install -y. And I'm going to really trust the conference Wi-Fi right now to do its thing. Thankfully, it's a pretty small binary, although that's really slow. I was smart. I put it in a repo that I have locally. That's more faster.
Much more better.
Yeah, that's more better. That's thinking ahead, Stevie. All right, so this will install Grafana onto this machine to the standard location. You can install Prometheus from Chocolatey, but the package maintainer puts everything in like the lib directory for the package, and I didn't like that. I wanted it to be in C Prometheus, so I didn't use the package for it. But if you wanted to use Chocolatey, you can Choco install all the bits and pieces that we're going to do today. So that'll put Grafana on the box. And while we're waiting for Grafana to load onto the box, we will go ahead and grab the configuration for that. And that should be good. It is. So we will go here. And now I got to remember where I put it. Oops. Yeah, that's right. Paste. And we'll do the same thing here. We will restart service Grafana. Now, in theory, this VM is going to do the same thing again. What is it doing?
Windows up arrow.
I want to see if it's both browsers. It's not. All right, we're just going to use this one because it's being nice to me. Or it's not. Now this one's to. Oh, there it is. There we go. Grafana.dv coaster.dev. Please load. That would be very nice of you. Thank you. All right, and then admin, we can log in. And then we need a new password. Oops, of course it doesn't match PSH. There we go. There we go. All right, so now we've got Grafana built, and then we can start to configure Grafana. So we'll go here, we'll go to connections, data sources, add a data source. We're going to say this one, and then it's called Prometheus, and then here we need to give our Prometheus URL. So prometheus.steviecoaster.dev. Oops. Colon 9090. No authentication. That all looks good. We can save and test it. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so now that we have our data source and our Prometheus stuff all done, once we actually start getting data in, then we can go to dashboards and start creating dashboards. That'll be super handy. Now, we're so close to being able to play with this stuff. So what we're going to do next is go back to here, get my configuration out, and then do our exporter, and same kind of deal on my Prometheus box. Now, we'll set up the XNMP exporter and the same deal. We'll make sure that we have everything working correctly. Wait, what did it do? Oh, it's not what I wanted to do at all. Copy. Paste. There we go. Okay, that looks good. So the XNMP exporter is working as well. And then we can do the same thing that we did before. Now, why are you not copying to my clipboard? Okay. I want that configuration file. Okay, that looks good. So now we'll install the service. That's fine. And then we just need to grab that configuration file. Okay. Oops. Let me grab it from here. I'm hoping that we have time to actually see something. Because I have 15 minutes to finish this up. Okay, cool. So here, restart service SNMP exporter. All right, so that should get the XNM or the SNMP exporter thing working correctly. And I think that's 9116. And it just runs on localhost. So we should be able to see a web interface here, yeah. Cool, and then for this, we should be able to do this. Oops. Just doing a bunch of quick tests real quick against it. So we should be able to see, yeah, let's see. If they're connected to no such host. Oh, crap. Yeah, you're good. I probably had a typo. I bet you I had a typo somewhere. Yeah, I had a typo somewhere. All right, so SNMP is working across that. Awesome. Now, I did want to take just 2 minutes to talk about SNMP Exporter and Prometheus because let me tell you, when I first figured this out, it was like 18 hours of my life, and there was not enough bourbon in Kentucky to make it work. It was bad, but I finally got it to work. So what you do is you join their development team and you teach them how to write code. But what you do is this generator thing. So you use a Docker container to generate the SNMP YAML file that the SNMP exporter uses to query all the stuff. So I'm not really going to go through all of this. Well, yes, I am. I'm just going to do it because it takes just 2 seconds. So we're going to run this. I'm going to get that. We are on version 25.0 branch. Good. We're going to CD into the generator folder. That's extremely important, by the way. Be in that generator folder when you do this, because if you're not in the generator folder, the Docker file loses its mind and doesn't know where you are and doesn't give you a good error to tell you that, hey dummy, you're in the wrong folder. That's all that's wrong. It sends you down this 3-hour rabbit hole of Google and Stack Overflow and, you know, probably 2 glasses of bourbon, and all of a sudden you figured out that you're just dumb and you see the end of the directory and everything's fine. So do that. So we're going to real quick run this, and of course it's going to want a password because why would it not? All right. Unable to locate a Java runtime. Oh, you're going to make me angry. All right, let's see. Give me this and this. All right, CD this. Oops. There we go. I'm going to have to copy a big bunch of stuff out of this and over to this terminal. Apologies. It's broke. Why is it broke? Well, clearly it doesn't want me to show you the SNMP exporter thing, so I'm not going to. Basically, all you do is run this stuff, and then inside of this generator folder, there is a generator.yaml file. You replace that generator.yaml file with whatever you want, and it's not in here now because I can't build it, but once it's in here you replace it with, well actually it's probably in here, yeah, here. So this file here, you replace it with the stuff that you want. So by default it gives you like everything. It's crazy how much stuff it gives you. But what this does is it goes off, and for every one of these modules, like these things here, whatever OIDs are listed, it walks them, and then it grabs that data and it turns it into something that looks a little bit like this. So yes, it has those same things again, but then it actually dives into it a little bit and defines like the type is a gauge, and like it gives you all this information. So that's what the generator does. It like walks the device and figures all that stuff out from the SNMP walk command and builds this file. And it's black magic and it's stupid and I hate it, but that's how it works. So in this case, like we've got all of these different MIBs that I kind of kept around. But I wanted to generate, and of course, because I can't get this generator to work, this part's not going to work, so it's kind of goofy. But basically, my generator that I wanted to use was this host resources MIB thing that only has like the stuff that would work for Windows Server. So the system stuff, the storage stuff, the device stuff, the software stuff, and the performance stuff. So all of that SNMP data it would go in here. And of course, once you have that, it would generate this thing. But I'm trying to think, did I hide a working copy of that anywhere? I don't think I did. Unless, did I trash it? No, of course not. Okay.
Just to kind of clarify, is Prometheus kind of the database?
Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, let's just walk through that a little bit because that'll be a little bit less confusing. So if we go to Prometheus, this is the time series database. Everything reports, like everything is collected into this database, and it's, you know, based on the job, you can query information out of this database. So the SNMP exporter or the WMI exporter, or whatever exporter you use on the devices that you want to collect data from, report that information back to your Prometheus instance. And then Grafana talks to Prometheus using this query language here and shows you the data. I can actually, I have a contingency plan for this, as luck would have it. Let me do this. Let me go to this. So I restore the snapshot and cheat. I can do that. And then what else can I do? I probably have Grafana as well. I can restore it to a snapshot. So this one, restore snapshot. Don't save. So in theory, with these two things restored, I should be able to go to grafana.steviecoaster.dev. I think, oh, you know what? No, I won't, because that is all wrong now. Now I gotta really hurry up because I changed IP addresses. Oops. You are what? 78th, and you are going to be what? $75. Okay. Steal you. We are going to mad dash get to this. Sudo HC host. No, oops. Sudo nano. Okay. Did I goof that up? I just want to see Grafana, guys. It's not working. This is Prometheus is 175. Oh, yeah, that's right. Thanks. I think I did both of them. Yeah, 175 and 178 is Grafana. That should be what they want. Yeah, it's up, it's just not running. Wonder if it's just the service is not running or something. That's Prometheus. This one is Grafana. Restart service. Grafana. Oh, that's awesome. Apparently this is the wrong snapshot, maybe? I don't know. Oh. Let's do this. Don't save. It's probably this. Probably that, if I had to bet. Because I think this works, yeah. So now I just need to get Prometheus or Grafana up and running. I just want to show a dashboard. That's all I want to do. I had see. Oh, IP. There we go. 181 for Grafana. Okay. There it is. Beauty. All right, now let's see if I can remember what my password is. All right, cool. So if we go to this, it's probably not going to be as pretty as I would like because my demo server is not restored as well, but there should be some old data inside of here. So if I look like last, I don't know, 24 days or so, some of this data is not going to work because I didn't restore that demo server correctly. But this part is working here. So you can see the installed software by display name. I've got it all. Like, this comes from the SNMP stuff. But if I were to, I'm not going to restore the other one because I've only got 2 minutes. But that's kind of what Grafana looks like. Unfortunate that stupid Java thing happened. I don't know what's up with that, but chalk it up to the demo gods. Does anybody have any questions about that part of it? Because I've just completely like thrown a whole bunch of crap at you. Like, so much. So if not, I suppose we can throw the thank you slide back up. If you want to review the session and all that good stuff, I really appreciate all the feedback, but hopefully it was useful. Hopefully you think SNMP data is kind of cool now. Like, I know it's an old trick, but it really is useful. There's a ton of stuff out there that you can do with it and help give you some observability in your environment. So thanks everybody for coming. Appreciate it.